be moderating this session on scaling up PPAs. So we're going to be diving into particularly corporate renewable power purchase agreements. My name is Scanlan. I'm Managing Director of the Resource Platform. We're a coalition of corporate energy buyers and renewable energy suppliers. We've got a fantastic lineup for you today to really digest this very juicy topic that everyone in Brussels seems to be talking about. It's popping up in the Clean Industrial Deal, Affordable Energy Action Plan. So much attention around these PPAs, but really how can we accelerate and help industry benefit from this long-term contracting? So, structure of the panel today is we first got a keynote speech from LevelTen. So this is going to be looking at how we can really evolve PPAs, particularly looking at how we can respond to some challenges we're seeing, like negative prices, the move to granularity. So fantastic, and really happy to introduce on stage, we have Andrés Acosta from LevelTen. Please.
Hello. So thank you very much to Euroelectric for hosting us in this stage, and thank you for choosing this session to be part of, especially with this nice weather outside. I'd much rather prefer to be outside enjoying the sun. So happy to have you here. My name is Andrés Acosta. I'm the Director of Innovation at LevelTen Energy, and we're going to talk about PPAs, how they are at the moment, how they're evolving, and what's going to happen with them. So very quick about LevelTen Energy. We are a platform for renewable energy transactions, so namely PPAs. Mostly we're active across North America and Europe, looking forward to expand into APAC in the next round, mostly India, Japan, and Australia. And at the moment in Europe and North America, we have the largest network of buyers and sellers. We have mediated and closed 62 PPAs last year, 28 of those in Europe. And we have a very large network of developers, of sellers, utilities, IPPs, a lot of them members of Euroelectric, about 1,200 of them, about 800 of them in Europe. So we're going to talk about PPAs. And so what about PPAs? PPAs have been around for a while in Europe. PPAs have been around since like 2016, 2017 across Europe. And well, they need to evolve because we're facing a couple of sort of new drivers here. One of them, and you've heard about it all the time, and you're going to keep hearing about it, is price cannibalisation, negative pricing. So we're seeing how negative prices have been eroding the value of PPAs and eroding the value of pay-as-produced shades, especially solar, in countries like Germany and Spain. It's all over the news. So this is eroding the value of a typical sort of plain vanilla pay-as-produced PPA. Also, there are some pushes from regulatory perspective. So you have requirements for the hydrogen producers to have hourly matching of supply and demand. There are movements in some countries like Ireland and Denmark to do the same for data centers. But not only that, there's updates to the greenhouse gas protocols and others in order to define what scope 2 is and how it's going to be measured. So that's all pushing towards more 24/7 matching. And then, of course, you have the voluntary commitments from sort of trailblazers and companies pushing the boundaries like Google and others and Microsoft, getting into 24/7 matching of supply and demand of those PPAs, of that renewable energy. So what is it and what is the issue at the moment? So you can have, of course, your demand curve. You can see in the screen here. And then you sign a PPA, you sign a solar PPA. You're going to have hours, of course, nighttime, where you're not going to meet your demand. So, of course, by definition, initially, if you manage to, on a yearly basis, the volume of supply and demand to match, you can claim you're 100% renewable, provided you have the guarantees of origin of that PPA. But that's not going to cut it in terms of matching. You can, of course, top that up by stacking PPAs on top of each other. And then you have some wind, you have some solar. You're still going to have some of these slots here in some hours where you're not going to be 100% covered by your supply agreement. So your demand is not going to be matched by time generation in that specific moment in time. And you're also going to have an issue. You're going to have hours, like the ones in the early morning, where you're going to have supply, but you're not consuming that energy. So while that's not an issue on a yearly volumetric level, that can be an issue in terms of your exposure to those hours because you don't need that energy in those moments. So there comes the concept of granular certificates. So a granular certificate, and GOs here, and we call them in Europe, of course, most of you are aware of that. At the moment, you have a GO, which is 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy, and it tells you information about the month, the year, which unit and the location of that unit of generation, and we need that to evolve into something more granular, containing more information to be able to have a better tracking of that generation. So that's where a granular certificate comes in place. They're also referred to as TICs, sort of time energy attribute certificates, or hourly GOs, hourly RECs. And that's with the help of the friends from Energy Tag who have been defining guidelines and standards, and they're present here as well. So this granular certificate would have a face value of just 1 watt-hour of carbon-free energy and information about the hour, the day, the month, and the year, and the location, of course, and what asset is it coming from. So once those certificates are available, and at the moment in Europe they're not available, you have seen some countries pushing forward, Denmark, Ireland, Hungary, more likely in the horizon, we're going to be able to do the following. You're going to be able to buy those certificates on those specific hours to fill that gap when your PPAs are not providing you energy to fill and match your demand. And not only that, once you have that your demand matched by your generation on those hours, you're going to be able also to sell that surplus certificates that you have on hours where you're not actually demanding that energy. So how is that going to be possible? Of course, we are not coming up here to sell certificates. We are not going to mint certificates, but we have put together with the help of the Granular Certificate Trading Alliance, which is an alliance formed in the US originally between key and leader buyers and sellers of renewable energy, AES, Constellation, and on the buy side, Microsoft, Google, and on the market side, ICE and ourselves. We created an alliance to be able to create a granular certificate marketplace. So the granular certificate marketplace is going to allow buyers and sellers to both buy certificates in advance, so you can already secure a revenue for those certificates as a generator, but also to buy certificates that have been minted in the past, so you can sort of spot fill those gaps that you have in your matching between generation and consumption. Those auctions are going to happen in the environment of ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange, and this pilot is already being put in place in the US. It's going to be live in September in PJM. Why there? Because that's the registry that already mints these type of certificates and where it's possible. We will ideally be able to launch this in Europe as the registries become ready to be able to trade those certificates. So, but I'm not here only to talk about certificates, but also how PPAs are evolving and how are we addressing some of these issues between cannibalization and hourly matching. And another talk of town is battery storage, hybrid PPAs, battery energy systems. So we at LevelTen Energy, we have a marketplace, but more than that, we have a network. We have a network of buyers, we have a network of sellers, and we want to fast forward the energy transition. And we're hearing from both ends. So the developers, they're trying to develop battery storage, but they need bankability, so they need some revenue stability, revenue certainty for those battery storage projects to be able to be financed. But they also want some flexibility to not put all the money, leave it in the table, but have some exposure to the upside of those potential wholesale market optimization revenues. And they need other stuff. And they're asking us, how can we market this to buyers? And then on the other side, we have the buyers who are saying, okay, we see the batteries. We see that we can start getting some of time shifting of those generation hours so we can achieve 24/7 matching. But how do we contract those? Most of those buyers are not traders. They don't want to make money out of the arbitrage in the multi-market optimization. They just want to get to 24/7. They want to fulfill their commitments, and they want some products that they can actually buy, some simplicity on those products. They want to understand how to value those products, and they need some price stability. They need to mitigate the risk. So we at LevelTen, we're happy to facilitate helping, talking buyers and sellers, defining those products, be it like tolls, virtual tolls, like revenue splits, floors, hybrid PPAs, other type of structures that we're going to be hearing more often and more often in the coming months and years. And basically, and I'm going to get a little bit too technical here, but bear with me for a second. The idea just to explain to buyers in a simple way, and the way they're used to seeing analytics in our platform, like valuing a PPA is relatively easy. You compare your long-term price forecast against a PPA fixed price, and then you have a difference. But here you have to have some scenarios because you're going to optimize that battery. So we explain them high level. We don't need to take a look at detail here, but you can optimize the battery in like a silly optimization where you're always charging the same hours and discharging the same hours, and then you're going to get some upside from it. but those hours where you're charging and discharging are not always the best hours. So in real time with perfect information, you would have charged in different hours and discharged in different hours. So we run the analytics and we explain them what the sort of corridor of those different optimization strategies could be. So one example here is you have a solar PPA in Germany, capture price is 60 euros per megawatt hour, but if you add a 2-hour battery, you can capture between 70 and 74 euros per megawatt hour for that PPA, and we explain the buyer, this is what you could be having access to, and then we sort of bridge that gap in the middle so they understand this without being energy traders experts. And of course, if they want to get more complex, you can get into multi-market optimization, different revenue sources. Here I'm just giving an example. And all of that to say, PPAs are evolving. We're not having the same type of PPAs that we have been seeing for the last 8 to 10 years. And we need to be able to speak the same language. We need to be able to get those products to market and speak the same language between buyers and sellers. And if you want to learn more about that, if you want to discuss that, happy to discuss with you. I'm looking forward to the panel here with the team that is just coming after me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrés. Really set the scene well as how PPAs are kind of responding to some of these system challenges that we're seeing. I'm going to ask my panel to come on stage. So while you're finding your seat, we do actually have a Slido. So hopefully you can all scan this QR code. And the question is going to be, how much renewables capacity was deployed through corporate PPAs in 2024 in Europe? So I don't know if we can see that on the screen. Whilst you're answering, I'll also take the opportunity to introduce our panel. So going from, hello, welcome. So next to me, I've got Eyckmans, who's Global Category Manager at Nyrstar. Then we have Ivan Contreras, who's Senior Manager for Platform Sales at LevelTen, so another LevelTen colleague, welcome. Then we have Vincent Verbeke, from the CEO of Engie, Belgium, welcome. We then have Ginevra Guzzi, who is Director for Renewable Energy Liaison in EMEA for Microsoft, hello. Then, from the institutions, we have Ignacio Asenjo, who is Team Leader for Energy System Integration at DG Energy. And right on the end, hello, we also have Kevin Tang, who's Director for EU Energy Storage at CATL. Welcome, thank you so much for joining me. Do we now have the results of our poll? So, well done, 52% of the room. That's correct. It was 12.7 gigawatts contracted capacity from PPAs. So this seems quite positive, right? Maybe we can dive into where this has come from. Ignacio, we're going to start with a bit of a historical question. So maybe you want to throw your mind back to your trainee years in the Commission, because we wanted to know, in the past that PPAs were not. Well, would you agree that the Commission didn't see PPAs as the key tool that they see today, and sort of how did that evolve in your opinion?
Well, thanks for the question. I think it's indeed interesting to look backwards a little bit and think about how EU energy policy on electricity has been evolving over the years. So indeed, I mean, for a long time, the biggest priority of EU energy policy on electricity has been to deploy short-term markets. Short-term markets were essential to ensure that price signals get to the actual price of the electricity for the inputs and for the integration of markets as well. And of course, there was a question also of breaking monopolies over the years and unbundling also a little bit over the years to ensure that we have enough competition in the market and enough cross-border capacity. The problem with long-term contracts at the time is that, for instance, that they booked all cross-border capacity was booked on long-term contracts, and so we needed to free up capacity for short-term contracts to develop short-term contracts day ahead, intraday, forwards, etc., in the different markets, and then connect them through this cross-border capacity. So that was clearly the priority, and I think probably in this room, almost everyone will agree that it has been a success to a large extent, and we have the largest integrated electricity market in the world. So, well, I heard that India is bigger now, but okay. Now, why has this been changing a little bit? I think there are two reasons. One is, coming from a longer time, which is that renewable energy investments require certainty for the investment to take place, so we need these long-term contracts for investments to take place. And the second is simply the energy crisis. The energy crisis showed that, yes, it's good to have price signals, but there are limits in a way. So this direct connection between natural gas prices that were geopolitical and electricity prices was politically very difficult to accept. And so we had the revision of the electricity market design where we said, okay, short-term markets clearly remain a priority, and we still have a lot to do on short-term markets, on balancing, on forwards, on intraday, and we need to continue to develop them, but we can also develop also long-term contracts alongside, okay? And so we have three main categories, which are PPAs, which are the purely private contracts indeed, and how we can promote them without regulating them too much. Then we have two-way contracts for difference from the public side for public subsidies to renewable generation and nuclear, so clean generation. And finally, the forward markets for the 3-year horizon that we also need to develop. So now we see that there is a combination and a complementarity between short-term and long-term markets, and so we are also trying to develop those long-term markets, especially to ensure investments in renewables. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, turning to one of our corporate energy buyers on the panel. So, Ginevra and Microsoft, I mean, you're one of the biggest purchasers of renewable energy in the world, so congrats for that. Tell us more a bit about your strategy and, what do you need to achieve your net zero goals?
Yes, we have very ambitious targets, and it's a lot of work. But we have been putting tons of resources towards that, and we are making really good progress. So, back in 2020, we made big announcement for our sustainability targets by 2030 of being carbon negative, water positive, zero waste, and protect more land than we use. All of them have their own merits and are super interesting, but for the sake of time, I will focus on the carbon negative portion of things, and specifically what we look at for Scope 2 emissions. So to be carbon negative, we have two specific targets by the end of 2025, so it's very close, and we're on track to achieve that. We will be matching all of our global consumption, so think all the data centers, all the offices, all the campuses, every single electron matched by 100% renewable energy. And that's our first really big achievement that we're on track for. That is a global annual target. It's a volume, megawatt hours for the year. Now, the next ambitious thing, of course, is by 2030, what we call our 100-100-0 target. 100% of the electricity, 100% of the time, zero carbon. So the 24/7 target. That is very difficult, as pretty much everyone in the room knows. And that will require a lot of innovation in how we contract PPAs, both from the buyer side and the seller side, how we think about the mix of technologies, hybrid PPAs, solving accounting issues that seems funny enough, but is actually a big obstacle, and then innovations also on the contracting side. So that is what we are now towards turning our focus towards. I will also highlight that another very ambitious target is we're not happy to just be carbon negative, but we want to actually remove all of the historical emissions that we have emitted since our founding in 1975 by 2050. Now that requires creating a new market in high quality carbon removal projects. And that market is probably where the PPA markets was 15 years ago in its infancy, and that is super important. So these are some of our public-facing goals. But one additional thing that I want to highlight is how also we're committed to using our local infrastructure to give back to the grid, to the communities. Examples of that are, for instance, using our batteries on site, our UPS systems, to provide fast frequency response to the local grid. That is something that we have pioneered in Dublin. Or what we're doing in Finland, which is using our waste heat to give it back to the district heating system so that we can heat up to 250,000 homes in the local community. So it's a wide portfolio of initiatives, and we continue to be committed as ever to our sustainability goals.
Very good, thank you so much. Now, Philip, I'm going to turn to you. So another corporate energy buyer on the panel, also an electro-intensive industry, data centers very electro-intensive, but metals also. So what's your interest in PPAs and yeah, how are you getting on with signing some?
Yeah, so Nyrstar, we're a producer of metals, mainly lead, zinc and indium. But what's fascinating about the metals business is that our raw materials contain the whole chemical table. So a lot of other metals like gold, silver, copper, germanium, gallium that are in there. We extract some of these metals as concentrates that we sell to other metal companies that then make the pure metal, like gold and silver. Germanium and gallium are not valorized at this moment, but they're there, so the potential is there. So we are a very important business. The metals business is very important, not only for the base metals that are important for the transition, but also for the critical metals that are contained in our raw materials. And if we lose that feed, if we lose that industry in Europe, we lose also access to these metals. As said, we are highly energy intensive. Zinc business is almost fully electrified. So we make zinc through electrolysis already for 50 years. So we have very low direct CO2 emissions, but we do have, of course, scope 2 emissions through our electricity consumption. That's what we are focusing on, and so we want to do whatever we can to help decarbonize the grid. The first step is on-site renewable power. For instance, in Belgium, we have a 100 megawatt solar park that is connected to our grid. We have a PPA with them. It's the largest in Belgium, but still only covers 8% of our annual demand. So we are always looking into more options. We also have windmills, but there we do not have any potential anymore. We do have potential for some more solar panels. We're very close to signing a PPA for another 30 megawatt. But even then, yeah, that's only 2% of our needs. And so it's a nice to have, it's a first step, but it's not enough. We are complementing that with guarantees of origin. And we are, of course, interested to sign PPAs. We can manage as produced PPAs from wind power, for instance. I will come back to that later. But of course, the cost has to be competitive. We are competing globally. Just like Solvay, who was in the panel this morning, we need to have electricity costs that are globally competitive. And that's a big challenge. But we are people that look at the glass rather half full than half empty. So we're also looking at creative solutions to overcome that.
I like the glass half full, because clearly there's big demand, and that's where our friends at Engie come in. So how important are PPAs to your decarbonisation strategy? It sounds like a big opportunity. Lots of customers want PPAs.
Yeah, sure. So at Engie, we want to accelerate the energy transition. And specifically here in Belgium, we have 3 priorities: developing more renewable, developing more flexibility, we'll come back on that, super important, and focusing on our clients. So you see in that story, PPAs is a central piece. That is clearly a central piece of it, and we are one of the global leaders in the PPA business worldwide, and what makes us very unique is the fact that we can do PPAs on pretty much any sort of technology. It can be wind offshore, it can be wind onshore, it can be solar, it can be a combination of those technologies. It can be combined with flexibility with batteries. We can do any type of geographies, and also we have signed PPAs with a large variety of clients, like industries, technological companies, and many others. So very proud of that position, and our business model is very much supporting that story as well, because we develop renewable energy, and we bring that clean energy to our customers, be it B2B or B2C, and we bring it at the right time, at the right place. So the flexibility aspect is also super important. And as we speak, because I've heard about that in previous sessions, we are working on the next generation PPAs, so the 24/7 carbon-free energy. This is a product that we're working on, and this is our ultimate goal, is to bring to all our customers who want it 24/7 clean power energy. as consumed instead of as produced.
Thank you so much. So Van, we already heard from LevelTen and sort of the innovations that are happening in this space. What other trends are you seeing in the PPA market?
Yeah, great. So I think when we talk about PPAs, there are different ways of seeing it. For everybody that is not an expert on PPAs, you can see it from a price perspective, you can see it from a shape perspective, you can see it from the warranties of origin perspective. So we look at all of them, you can see different trends. So if we look at the certificate part, what Andrés was saying, this 24/7 certificate is something that is coming. In the case of the shape, so what we call the plain vanilla PPA at LevelTen is virtual PPA with a fixed price with a pay-as-produced shape. But we are also seeing other types of shapes, maybe a fixed price instead of buying anything that is from the assets. You can buy a specific portion. We can also see a lot of interest in baseload PPAs. But the difficulty with baseload PPAs, not everybody in the market is available to offer it. Only a few companies are offering it. A lot of buyers want it. There are buyers that have very baseload profiles. There have others that changes a little bit. So adapting as a consume PPAs, that we see a trend also in that. And then with the fixed price, we also see other type of shapes. So market index, also called market following, where you have a floor, and then on top of the floor, you get a discount on the spot price. We also have a pay as nominated. So we have different type of PPAs that can change and can vary depending on the needs of the buyer. I think a lot of developers and a lot of utilities are moving into adapting them and trying to change the plain vanilla PPA to a much more advanced structure.
Thank you. And a key part of this is, of course, storage. So, Kevin, we have you from CATL, which is a big battery producer. How are PPAs fitting into your decarbonisation strategy?
Yeah, I think before about the topic, we're talking about scaling up the PPA. I think the point is that how could we guarantee the long-term PPA? So CATL, as a battery manufacturer, we already deploy our local plant here in Europe. So in our German plants, we need a lot of renewable energy, which we require minimum is 200 gigawatt hour the energy per year. And for our Hungary plants, we have 3 phases. The first phase, we need a minimum 500 gigawatt hour. So in total, we need 1,500 gigawatt hour in Hungary. And so we need a lot of renewable energy. And probably you know that with our JV with Stellantis in Spain, which will be LFP battery manufacturer, we also need minimum 1,400 gigawatt hour. So from a battery manufacturer or a local plant here in Europe, we actually ask for a pretty high quality of the renewable energy, but we always say that the challenges that come from the wind turbine and also solar projects. So once we think about the stability of how to guarantee a long-term PPA from our suppliers, the first thing we're talking about like energy storage. So my own job is for the energy storage business. And once we travel here in Europe, we find a lot of challenges for those long-term assets. The wind turbine asset and the solar panel assets need a lot of maintenance job. And from CATL side, like once the first day that we do our business here for our German plant, we already localized 90%, more than 90% of our staff from local area. And that is the key for us to successfully run the plant. And from the energy storage business, we also have the same philosophy. So before we came here to Europe to massively deliver our energy storage solutions, we already established a lot of local partners, agencies, to help us to deploy the capability for the service to our energy storage assets. We believe the local knowledge and experience here from Europe, it will be the key for us to maintain the long-term operation and together the long-term the PPA guarantee.
Thank you so much. So perfectly set the scene. Suppliers want to sell PPAs, buyers want to buy PPAs. So great, we've solved the problem. We are going to go next to our Slido question again, and this is going to look at a bit more the barriers to scale up PPA adoption. So hopefully you've got a QR code that you can then scan and answer the question. So the options are, is it renewables licensing? Is it lack of flexible capacity? Limited liquidity on the forward markets? Grid connection delay? Or other? read that as you may. As they're answering the question, I think let's continue with our panel. So Ignacio and Vincent, do you want to maybe shed some light on, PPA in the end is a route to market. It's a financing tool for new wind and solar. Do you see it as quite compatible with sort of state-backed models, or is it a competition between the two?
We see the compatibility, yes, also because when we revised the electricity market regulation, we introduced a sort of right, if you want, for developers who are bidding into an auction for public support. They have the right to combine that with PPAs. They have the right to reserve part of the generation for a PPA and not to bid the whole generation to the auction. Of course, that's one thing. And another thing is to design the auction since the beginning, design the CFD, so design the support in a way that can be properly combined with PPAs. So we committed in the Affordable Energy Action Plan to issue a guidance by the end of the year about how to design two-way contracts for difference. The main aspect of that guidance is how to design it in a way that you ensure market responsiveness in the dispatch in particular to avoid the situations of negative price hours that we are having. So that will be the main focus, but we will also look into the combination between CFDs and PPAs, where we have, of course, to respect the main principles of state aid. It's a bit, can be complex, but I think we can find solutions for that combination between CFDs and PPAs. After that, in the beginning of next year, we'll also issue a different guidance to member states with recommendations to promote PPAs in the different markets. And for that, we are currently doing study that is identifying the main barriers, such as the ones you show in the Slido, and other ones such as, guarantees of origin that don't trade very well. There are some member states that are still not really integrated in the system. So in that guidance, we'll be covering many different aspects about PPAs, including the use of PPAs for nuclear as well, which is something that we are very interested in as well, and for other energy carriers like heat. So it will not be PPAs, but heat PAs or hydrogen PAs in the future as well, to see how we can develop those markets. And of course, the issue of cross-border PPAs, which we think is also very important.
Thank you so much. And so how does Engie see this situation, CFDs versus PPAs? And is it helpful then that the Commission is going to bring out some guidance on this?
Well, that's a very good question, and some tend to oppose CFDs and PPAs. I think this is a fundamental mistake. Basically, the two can coexist, and we need the interactions between the CFD world and the PPA world to be as smooth as possible. And at the end of the day, that was reminded this morning. We need the marketplace role. So we need to let the market parties to decide, and the developers to decide whether they want to go for CFDs or they want to go for PPAs. PPAs can be a very useful tool in order to support the development of renewable, especially in times where the member states' budget is constrained. It's a very elegant way to support the deployment of renewable capacity, which at the end we all want. And next to that discussion around CFDs or PPA, I think one very important point is we need a stable regulatory framework. It cannot change every time. I mean, consistency here is of the essence. It's absolutely key. And on the infrastructure, it was the first answer to the question. We need flexibility. We need grid and we need flexibility. That's the key if we want to deploy more renewable, if we want to do more PPAs. So at scale and at pace.
Super, thank you. Maybe we can have a little look at the results of the Slido to see what you guys think. And I think sticking on the topic of flexibility, so Philip, you were talking about, you're very electro-intensive. Are you flexible at all? And what barriers do you face in sort of building this flexibility into the system?
Yes, we are flexible. So a typical zinc plant consumes more than 1 terawatt-hour of electricity on an annual basis. And historically, it's been baseload consumption. So our main consumption is in the electrolysis. Typical electrolysis consumes 120 megawatts of baseload. But yeah, since the energy crisis, there are quite a lot of hours that we have to pay more. Sometimes we even had to pay more for electricity than the zinc is worth. So of course we could not afford that. So we had to go down in production. And we can do that quite easily from an operational point of view. So we can go down within 5 minutes, go up within 5 minutes, up to 80% of a capacity. So that's very flexible. I think that's quite unique. I don't know any process that is of that size that is that flexible. It's a big asset that we have, but we are also very capital intensive. So our only variable cost is electricity. So if we go down in capacity, we have to allocate our fixed cost over less tons of zinc, and we are not profitable anymore. So we can be profitable, but we also need to run at full capacity, and that's why we have a project to debottleneck our electrolysis. So what we will do is we will increase the capacity of our bottleneck, of our electrolysis, so that is not a bottleneck anymore. We will put buffers before and after the electrolysis of a liquid that goes into and that goes out. And that way we can be very flexible and we can more or less follow an offshore wind production profile. So we could source this plain vanilla PPA or a portfolio of plain vanilla PPAs and we could solve this problem of flexibility. The challenge is that still then we need to invest in this overcapacity. That's more than 1 million euros per site that we need to invest. And then still we need to be able to source this plain vanilla PPA at a price that makes us globally competitive. And unfortunately, that's not the case today. We will not be able to do that. As mentioned by Solvay, prices are very high. We could blame companies that have deeper pocket than us, but the problem is even more fundamental. It's very expensive to build an offshore wind farm today, for instance. Capital costs have increased. The cost of development have increased, and that's a challenge that we're facing today.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it was not one of the choices on there, but indeed, I think just costs in general going up makes it a lot more complicated to get these deals over the line. The audience thought lack of flexibility capacity, though, so I think they're aligned with everything that you were saying. Ivan, so coming to you, I've lost my place. There we are. PPAs, because there's a lot of discussion around this being a important tool to help companies sort of ease what we saw in the energy crisis. But is this really a solution for every company? Can we all go away and sign our PPAs, or is it just for some customers?
Yeah, I think there are PPAs for everybody, to be honest. I think there are a lot of, not a PPA fits everybody, so that is why flexibility, changing the type of structure is also very important for the different type of buyer. I have buyers that sometimes come to me and they say, yeah, I cannot sign a virtual PPA because of the accounting treatment. My company does not comply with that, so that is not an option for me. And then I go, yeah, but we can look at a physical delivery option where you don't have that. And then that is an option for some clients. There are also some other clients that they have signed a PPA, but then the project has a lot of delays in the construction, so the project has a lot of delays, and that is a problem for them. And they don't want to sign a PPA with a new asset. And then they say, I always say, we have the option also with an operational asset, a project that is compliant with RE100 requirements for new plants. So there are different ways that we can adapt it. And so we have virtual PPA, we have physical, we have new plants, we have new asset, operational asset. We also have different other type of structures. So I think it depends on the needs of the client. There are some other ones that say they have a lot of problems with the long term. A lot of maybe 10 years contracts or 15-year contracts is something that is very difficult for some companies to adapt to agree on. But I always say we can always look at short-term PPAs. That is also an option, a 5-year contract, a 3-year contract, or buying a consortium with different buyers. So there are different ways. I think there are different options. And if people don't want the PPA name as their contract, there's always supply agreements with big utilities that can do a supply agreement for a couple of years, 1-2 years. There is always an option while they move ahead, because I know there is a hurdle for some buyers, like selling the type of contract internally that takes a lot of time. But I think depending on the client, there is a PPA that can fit everyone.
How big do you think these multi-buyer PPAs are going to be?
Now that we are moving to smaller, I think here we have a lot of big buyers, but we also have like smaller buyers that are not accessing the market. And we see that with a lot of buyers. So I think aggregated PPAs for those type of clients, something that should come more in the future.
Super. Now, again, sort of storage is really going to help us manage all these system changes as we go on. And we've actually seen the first few PPAs combined with storage. So, Kevin, what's your take on this, and how can technology be combined with the PPA?
I think the first thing is like how the PPA could help the developers or asset owners to increase their business model. So as battery manufacturer here in Europe, we need a very affordable PPA. But anyway, if it is like just price itself to the asset owner developers, it will also very difficult for them to achieve the bankability of their projects. So CATL actually, for the energy storage parts, we believe it will be the crucial part or components to this PPA or together with the renewable assets. We believe once we require more renewable energy into the grid, we absolutely need a more reliable technology for the energy storage. So once we talk about the 1 hour system to 2 hour system, and now in most of the market that we're talking about a 2 to 4 hour system. And in some market here in Europe, we even talk about an 8 hour system. So once we already evolved into such kind of energy storage system, and we want to make it suitable to the grid operation, we need to think about how this technology is reliable and suitable together with the traditional energy storage technology, especially like with the 8 hour system that we're comparing with the battery and energy storage with the like pump, the pump energy storage. So in first hand, we have a very quick deployment. And on the other hand, we are having a pretty new technology, which is battery, which is, I think, in all the energy period, it is the first time that we massively use this battery as a technology for the energy storage. So from CATL side, that we are always like have concern about this, because the battery is not just the chemistry products. It is the battery with chemistry, which is a systematical chemistry operation together with the mechanical design for the batteries, which after the, 10,000 cycles, we have a lot of materials collapse within a battery together with the swelling force. So today, once we talk about some standard industry batteries, where normally like a cell phone would talk about the 200-300 or maximum 1,000 cycles. But once we talk about the energy storage for the industry purpose, that is the products you need to use for more than 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. And how could we guarantee this technology to be like comfortable for everybody, for the consumer, for the developers, that everybody can feel more confident to provide a long-term PPA. And once we can solve this, I think we can absolutely scale up the PPA together with the increasing renewable energy in the grid.
So what do you think is the biggest barrier of combining PPAs and batteries today?
Personally, I like every project with PPAs. Every time when a client, so I have a PPA, I see, okay, this is really high quality project. Because everybody like this. Even a bank, they like this. They can help the developers to deploy the projects. So from CATL, we're also trying to help our customers once they develop the solar and the wind projects together with energy storage. So currently, we use our German plant, a Hungary plant, and Spanish plant to discuss with some developers to provide such kind of like a PPA model to our clients.
All right, thank you. Ginevra, shifting gears a little bit, tell us about your environmental justice program.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really glad that we get to talk about that, because it's something very close to my heart, and it's something where we're also trying to innovate globally. So for us, the way we achieve our targets is just as important as the targets themselves. And our environmental justice, or EJ program, really is a crucial part of that philosophy. What we're trying to do with that is to ensure that the clean energy transition is not just fast and scalable, but also is fair, inclusive, and supportive of the local communities that we operate in. And that support needs to be very tangible, but also long-lasting. That is, of course, important for our social license to operate and also to gain and maintain the trust with the local communities that we operate in. This is obviously true of every infrastructure project, maybe a solar or wind assets. When you go talk to the landowners and you want them to be on board, you want to be the mayor of the small village to be on board, but also when you're siting data centers, right? So we always want the communities to come along for the journey. And why is this relevant in the context of a PPA? Because the way that we are structuring our environmental justice program is to be completely entangled with the PPAs. So we set up community investment funds that are riders on the PPAs. So it's a set amount per megawatt hour that is put in a community investment fund that is managed by a local NGO, that it's engraved in the local community, really understands what the people on the ground need and how that money can be best utilized, whether it be workforce development, education, health equity, access to energy, whatever makes sense in the local community. We don't presume that we have that answer. We work with local NGOs to find that answer. And what's truly special about that is that we're not just plopping money once, okay, done, we walk away. This is tied to the term of the PPA, so this is a really committed support to the community to say, we're here for the next 10, 15, 20 years. We're here to continue support. We're here to help you grow together with these assets. And so that's a really special flavor. We also look at inclusive procurement and labor practices. So we focus on projects that hire local labor and pay fair wages, and as much as possible also contract with minority-owned companies. Especially we have a lot of those partnerships in the US. We also focus on enhancing ecosystems, and again, all of this kind of falls within the PPAs because we work very closely with the renewable energy developers to ensure that we avoid sites that use community-sensitive or ecologically interesting areas, but instead that we focus on actually renaturalization of the areas where we can bring back native species or create wildlife corridors. We also look at energy access and make sure that we expand energy access for underserved communities. So what we're really trying to achieve there is to make sure that we create a new standard for corporate clean energy procurement, where we don't just procure the clean electrons, but we are community first, community centered, and make sure that we enable also resilience and equity in the communities we work in to really live through our mission of empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And we believe that that starts at the local level through our PPAs.
Super. You know, that really touches on one of the biggest problems for developers around the kind of NIMBYism. But I really like the fact that your CEO actually of Engie this morning was saying that if they live near a solar farm, they actually have a bigger support for renewables because they see the benefits. So super, very good. Well, we've got a little bit of time left, so maybe to pick up on some of the topics in a bit more detail. You know, we all know it's a very difficult business environment right now. Of course, there's a lot of geopolitical issues, things are getting more expensive. PPAs are probably becoming a bit more complex to negotiate. One of the things around kind of negative prices, capture rates, you know, this is all building more risk into that PPA that needs to be negotiated. Maybe Ivan, starting with you, so could we still sign PPAs today? Is it getting harder to sign a PPA?
I think we're seeing a little bit of slowdown in the market in this year. Especially for solar. I think everybody knows that the price cannibalisation that Andrés was mentioning before is a very big issue. But I think the innovation, like with storage, is something that could help with PPAs. I think there's getting more complex. We are starting to see every day or every couple of weeks, we see new structures, new way of selling it, new way of buying it. So I think the market needs to be adapting to different kinds of PPAs, and not the plain vanilla, as I call it, and then find a match between the buyer and the seller. I think that's the most difficult one, depending on the innovative structures.
I mean, look at these kind of energy-intensive industries as well. Do you think it's challenging because maybe not all industries are as flexible as you?
Yeah, that's very challenging for us. We talked about grid fees this morning. A lot of investments are needed in the grid, that's for sure. But if all these costs are just passed through us, well, industries that need to electrify will not do it. We've electrified 50 years ago, and we're struggling. And there's a big difference between the different countries. For instance, in the Netherlands, the costs are just passed through. So our electricity, or the bill from the grid operator increased from 1 million euros to 25 million euros, which is tough to swallow. Yep. We cannot swallow it. We make zinc, we sell on the global market, so it just goes from our bottom line, and it's a big amount of money. So there's a need for recognition of competitiveness of electro-intensive industry, which is the case in some countries and much less in other countries. There's a need to adapt the tools that we can become flexible. For instance, Belgium has a capacity remuneration mechanism, which is meant to provide capacity. It's designed for gas-fired power plants and batteries. We can participate also with demand response, but only for 1 year. So we can be selected for 1 year. I cannot build a 100 million investment on 1 year revenue. So we would also like to participate for 15 years, but that's challenging. Why? Well, we don't get a good reason. It's just, we don't know the consumption side very well. We know the production side very well, but not the consumption side. Well, if you want consumers to be flexible, well, you will need to understand us and remove the barriers for us. And we see small steps, but we need bigger steps.
Vincent, how do you see this? Because there's obviously this need to electrify industry, but clearly then there's also challenges when industries are electrified. Is there the right incentives for companies to electrify, and then that obviously opening demand for PPAs?
Well, I believe that electrification is progressing globally very fast, actually, and I don't think that we have an issue on the demand side. Actually, we have more an issue on the supply side, and we need to work on that. And so, what is it that we need to do is we need to work on the administrative burden that are on the developers, because we want the capacity to be quickly available for consumer. That's one. Second, we need to work on our grid, and third, we certainly need, and that echoes to your point, we need more flexibility in the market, and flexibility can be brought by batteries, by other flexible generation facilities, but also flexibility can come from the demand side. And I think your example is a very good one. So large industrial can contribute to that, and hopefully in the future, B2C customers will be contributing to that as well. And for instance, here in Belgium, next door, we have launched a new innovative product in order to stimulate the flexibility on the B2C side, which is going to be tremendously important. So essentially, lowering the administrative burden, elevating the grid that we have, be it distribution or transport, and third, working big time on flexibility. Flexibility is the key for the energy transition to accelerate.
Ignacio, maybe looking to kind of what the Commission is doing to try and pick on some of these challenges we're hearing. Because people ask me a lot, what are the barriers to the PPA market? But then what I hear is a lot of just the system challenge, which of course the Commission is dealing with in other different kind of roadmaps and policies. So what will the PPA guidelines really zoom in on?
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking about. It's really PPA develop themselves in a framework, right? And so one of the issues that we still need is to have a bigger pipeline of renewable energy projects, so a bigger supply for the PPA market as well. So this, we are continuing to work on permitting issues. We did a lot of things in the previous mandate, but we still are ambitious on permitting for renewables, and now thinking about how to extend permitting acceleration also for storage and for grids themselves. So indeed, this is the general framework. On the demand side, we have been very focused, continue to be very focused on ensuring that we can bring more demand to PPAs, so smaller actors, and there is particularly the issue of the instruments to cover for the risk of this demand coming into the system. So we need guarantees. The EIB is working on guarantee as well. So we need all the different elements around the PPA proper to indeed work well. And of course, I can only underline the role of flexibility there, both through storage and in the demand side as well.
Thank you. Maybe before we go to our final sort of whip round, maybe just to come to Kevin and Ginevra. You're sat next to the Commission. What would you like to ask them that would really help you both with either your storage or procurement strategies?
I can only agree with what my fellow co-panelists have said so far and what has already been said in the sessions earlier today. We are in the age of electricity with increased demand across a variety of industries, and one thing that we're seeing is not keeping up the pace is the transmission and the distribution grid, so really the physical infrastructure, and this is something well identified and that the International Energy Agency has reported on a lot in recent years, where that is becoming a major constraint. And so the International Energy Agency identified in 2024 that about 1,650 gigawatts of wind and solar projects at really advanced stages of development that are globally waiting for a grid connection. Now that is just a huge missed opportunity, right? We have put all of that development, we've put all of those resources, we've got clean, cost-effective generation there that's ready to go and cannot be connected yet. So for sure, from our perspective, the build out of the grid infrastructure is a huge portion of it, and a major item is the speed and the complexity of permitting. Of course, these are major infrastructure projects and they need to be well thought through, well planned, and of course the permitting process has to be complex, but the timelines we're seeing now are just a bit extreme, and we're looking forward to working with partners to be able to streamline that. So if anything could be done to simplify the permitting for both the renewable energy generation and the build out of the infrastructure, I think that would really allow us to leap forward into the future of our energy system.
Thank you. Kevin, key ask for the Commission.
Yeah, actually, as a technology solution provider, we are trying very hard to standardize our solutions. And also, we are trying to standardize the energy storage, like a fire suppression system, the cooling system, with all those components with compliance here in Europe. And also, this is something that we would like to help our customers to have an easy-go permit application from authorities. So I think from CATL side that we are trying very, very hard to make the battery energy storage happen. And also we do a lot of testing and evaluating to make sure that our solution, it is deliverable and reliable for long-term operation and easy for all the operators. Because once we talk about the affordable PPA or affordable price, we need to think about if this affordable is from the CapEx or OpEx. I think this is the key for the scaling up the PPA.
Okay, so permitting, financing, standardization, that's what I'm hearing. Philip, what word or, key call to the Commission would sum up your views?
Yeah, we hear a lot of good initiatives and a lot of support for what we intend to do, and this has to be translated in concrete measures. To support industry, to support investments in flexibility.
Ivan?
Yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be speeding up the permitting process, stronger in the grids, and building more infrastructure.
Vincent?
The energy transition is unstoppable, and we need it to happen faster. So, permitting, grids, flexibility. Double down on flexibility.
I'll double down on the timeline. So we've got 34 gigawatts and counting of PPAs, but the clock is ticking for the 2030 goals, and we cannot afford the assets that we already have and that we will have to be delayed. So we need that clean, cost-effective generation on the grid as quickly as possible.
Ignacio, you've been taking notes, I'm hoping. This is all going to be in your guidelines, right?
No, but I mean, I think next priorities are indeed on permitting, and we will focusing a lot on electrification as well in the future. And I see that PPAs will be playing a very important role in the electrification drive as well.
Super. Well, I think we're going to wrap up there. We're a little bit over time, and I know it's lunchtime, so I don't want to prevent everyone from their sandwiches. Thank you so much for my great panel. Really, really interesting discussion. Thank you so much for the audience. Hope you enjoyed. Let's round of applause, yeah. One tiny plug that...